Mother Teresa said, "I was once asked why I don't participate in anti-war demonstrations. I said that I will never do that, but if you ever have a pro-peace rally, I'll be there." If you'll notice her paradigm, she understood. She didn't focus on losing, but she focused on winning. She didn't give any energy to what she didn't want or to fear. She put it all into love and faith and focused on creating the good fruits. A main purpose of this program is to help shake off all abuse in every system. If all we do is put people in prison or kill people who deserve it, we will never create peace. Create the conditions for peace, and all the other problems disappear. Everything connects to this. Eliminating war alone would eradicate poverty worldwide. But we can't just treat symptoms. We have to get to the cause of things. It's not good enough just not to be enemies. Some people pat themselves on the back for reaching that level of thought. Are we ready to focus on creating extraordinary friendships? How many of you believe that you all have the right to personal inspiration? It's amazing how many hands go up when I ask that question. How many of you think that you've been qualified for it 100% your entire life? Now, that's a different question. But we all have the right to that. We all have the ability, absolutely. And I don't think that any kind of religious organization should be persuading people to think otherwise. To say that there's not that flow of intelligence from the source, that someone shut off the intuition faucet, is silly. It's there for everybody. Always has been, always will be. Revelations chapter 22, verses 18 and 19 warns not to add to or take away from the words of that book. Chronologically, in time, Revelations was not the last book written of the books which are included in the Bible. Although it was placed last at the end of the King James Version, John was on an island called Patmos when he had the revelation and wrote it. Protestants and Baptists, who are a Protestant breakoff, believe the Bible alone is the single greatest authority of God, greater than any actual experience with God himself, which we'll explain more about why and how that came to be later on. Methodists have softened their view on that a bit, but some Protestant groups, especially Baptists, have misinterpreted these two verses to mean that we will have no other books written by prophets who receive any more revelations from God after the book of Revelations, which it really does not specify at all. Again, chronologically, it wasn't even the last book written of all the books in the Bible, although it was placed last. In fact, the same basic statement was written in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 2, which is the 5th book of the King James Version of the Old Testament. If that meant there was no more revelation, or revelation through future prophets, just erase everything after the 5th book of the Old Testament. 34 books in the Old Testament alone, and the whole New Testament, including Revelations itself. This would erase the history of God's dealings with every existing lineage today, including everything Abraham, Christ, Buddha, or Muhammad said, if God doesn't talk anymore. But if it's a law of the universe that God does talk, then the law is infinite and eternal, never-ending. Most likely, no one would have ever read too much into those two Revelations verses if they weren't afraid of losing their people to another lineage, particularly the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. which had integrated the books of prophets from the ancient Native American lineages, which totals about 1,000 years of recorded history, around 600 BC to 400 AD, as another testament of Jesus Christ, as well as some writings the ancient natives had integrated into their writings from another group, which was an even more ancient group that inhabited the Americas, known as Jaredites, whose language had not been confounded at the Tower of Babel. But after its occurrence, the Jaredites ended up in the Americas long before the second group. The Jaredites had built up a massive civilization, which eventually ended up in complete destruction due to abuse from egos and politics. Not one living Jaredite was left in the Americas, although they did leave a small historical record behind. In 600 BC is when Lehi's group came to the Americas from Jerusalem. And I have personally discovered evidence that both groups also ended up in Taiwan and other parts of the world. The Jaredites' story describes how they were guided by God, sort of like Noah with the flood, to build many capsules with which they were taken away with the ocean currents. And after having done this once, they could have done it again. Like Adam, Enoch, and Noah, the Jaredites lived prior to Abraham because they were at the Tower of Babel during the confounding of the tongues. If they are the people the ancient Taiwanese describe as arriving in capsules, they could have easily ended up all over Asia and all over the world. And don't worry, I'm not favoring the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints by bringing this up. I'll get to them later. On a side note, some of us believe in the hollow earth theory, even though for many, it's a bit too much cognitive dissonance for them to swallow, because they've built their belief system around another theory, which has never really been proven to them either. Hollow earth theory does better support the relatively new plate tectonics science, which has revolutionized our understandings of the geography of the planet. But if the earth is hollow, it's possible that some of the Jaredites could have been taken with the currents through an entrance into the hollow earth. Ancient maps of the inner and outer earth have been found in the Tibetan culture. If you're interested, just YouTube Operation High Jump or Admiral Byrd, or Google the personal story of Olaf Jansen, who tells how he and his father lived in Hollow Earth for 2 years. Hitler was a follower of Hollow Earth theory, and as an agent grandchild of Baron Rothschild, Hitler was funded with the means to beat the USA in the race to Hollow Earth. The X-Files always said, "The truth is out there." But Dr. Ez-Files has always said, "The truth is in there." The ancient legends of the northern countries are of gods like Thor, who are from a land even further north. It's also possible that the whole city of Enoch, which was described as being taken up into heaven, could have been taken up and into inner earth. And that inner earth may have been existing at a higher level realm, a form of heaven to what we've had on the outside. This may explain where Zarathustra's flying machine and other so-called ancient UFOs, which I prefer to call IFOs, have been coming from. That's enough of that for now.